invite you to join us on a journey trailing in the footsteps of one of the greatest Slovaks to have ever lived, whose story, legacy and destiny are intimately linked to France and to Paris. That man is no one else than General Milan Rastislav Stefanik, an astronomer, a pilot, a politician, a journalist, a photographer, who was born in a tiny little village in western Slovakia. Ever since he was a little child, Milan liked to look up at the sky and the stars and wonder what lay beyond. It was one of his greatest passions and desires to study and to understand the mysteries of the universe. But his family, especially his father, had a different life path in mind for Milan. They wanted him to pursue a more pragmatic career that would guarantee him comfortable livelihood, stability and security. But luckily Milan was not one of the kind who liked to give up so easily right at the beginning, and eventually he quit the study of engineering and signed himself up for astronomy. He graduated at the university in Prague, and in 1904 he came here to Paris, to the center of learning, wisdom and science, to make his dream happen. What he hoped for was to get a job at the observatory that you can see behind me, but Paris and life would test Milan's devotion and dedication to his dream and to his passion. On his arrival in Paris, Stefanik landed here in Rue Leclerc, just around the corner from the observatory and not far from the University of Sorbonne. This was the area that was frequented by some of the greatest minds of the era in the field of astronomy, and clearly Stefanik's hope was that sooner or later this would manifest into that serendipitous meeting and into that much desired position at one of city's prestigious institutes. But the reality of everyday life soon set in, and Stefanik struggled to make the ends meet in this expensive city. He was strengthening his position, widening his network of contacts, and improving his French, but he had very little money. At this time, he relied on the support of his sisters, on the money from grants that he could occasionally secure, and, as it is rumored, on the money of his many lovers. But it was still not enough, and Milan had to make the tough choice what to spend the little money that he had on. Would he spend it on food or on prolonging his time here in Paris, hoping that that big breakthrough moment was just around the corner? Being a man of iron will, with a drive that's not easy to come by, guess what he chose? It was always his dream. And eventually it did bring him that dream career, but it came at a cost. Stefanik was a man with a delicate physique, and the not eating soon showed in his health. The problems with his digestive system would go on to torment him for the rest of his life. But these sacrifices were not in vain. In the end, it all paid off, not just for Stefanik himself, but ultimately for Czechoslovakia. 1 year into his stay in Paris came the big moment, and Stefanik got a position with Jules Janssen, a world-class astrophysicist, the founder and the director of the observatory at Meudon in Paris, where we are now. So this is where Stefanik's career as an astronomer was off to a shooting international start. From here, his path led to distant and exotic corners of the world. He went to Tahiti, he climbed Mont Blanc several times. He was sent on diplomatic missions. Meudon was not just a gateway to the world, it also opened the doors to the high French society, to Stefanik. Became very close with his tutor, Mr. Jansen, and his family that adopted him and loved him as a son. It was through them that Stefanik got access to high political and social circles of the country and was beginning to build a network that would prove critically. One of the most fascinating aspects of Milan Stefanik's life, and one of the most discussed ones, is his love life, his many romantic affairs, and the long echelons of women. Out of those many ladies, one stands out, and it's Louise Weiss. We are in the grounds of her family home, and this lady was truly extraordinary. She was Stefanik's power match. She was witty, she was intelligent, she was very feisty, she was very driven and passionate about freedom, about peace, about democracy, and about the rights of women. And it was her who connected Stefanik to many important politicians and figures of public life here in France, and thanks to her, Stefanik could make headway in promoting the interests of Czechoslovakia in the years to come. When the First World War broke out, Stefanik was in Morocco. He was assigned there by the French government on a special scientific and diplomatic mission to explore and negotiate terms for a new observatory. But when the war was declared in 1914, Stefanik, by now a French citizen, had to enroll in the army too. So he returned to France and he entered the infantry regiment here in Chartres. But Stefanik's strength did not lie in his muscles, but in his powerful mind and an incredible knowledge of astronomy, but also meteorology. He didn't want to stay in the infantry. The French military too was just beginning to introduce new technology, aviation, into its army and was looking for experts. So soon Stefanik left the infantry and entered an aviation school here in Chartres. From then on, events proceeded fast. Within a year he was assigned to a front in France. On Western Front, Stefanik harvested success one by one. He distinguished himself with his very accurate weather forecasts. At one point, his prediction of a destructive storm saved an entire squadron from a total annihilation. Stefanik also conducted a number of courageous surveillance flights well beyond the enemy lines, proving himself to be a really precious asset for the French army that promptly recognized his contribution, and Stefanik received a number of awards. He also became tasked with setting up the first ever military meteorological service center here in France. From France, Stefanik's journey led to Eastern Front in Serbia. But Stefanik's health was deteriorating fast, and so he was forced to return to France in 1915. Once back in Paris, he wasted no time and he threw himself fully into a mission of his lifetime, that of liberating Slovaks and Czechs from Austria-Hungary and helping them to find their own country. But Stefanik knew that although the First World War brought an opportunity for Czechs and Slovaks to do just that, they needed a strong ally, a champion who would promote the cause and who would stand behind the legitimacy of the claim of Czechoslovaks to independence. And his roots were here in France, so this is where it began. It was Stefanik who, through his connections in French high society and high politics, managed to open the doors to the future president, Tomáš Garrigue Masaryk. And these two men together, in the end, really did achieve the impossible. They persuaded the French leadership that it was time to bid farewell to Austria-Hungary. The French were originally reluctant to do that, It was easier to deal with one big monarchy, one big state of Austria-Hungary that had been there for centuries. But Stefanik and Masaryk persuaded the French that their national interests in the heart of Europe would be better served by Czechoslovakia than the crumbling away empire of Austria-Hungary. It was here in Rue Bonaparte that the Czechoslovak National Council was founded. It was a big moment for Czechs and Slovaks, a big success, a big diplomatic success of Stefanik and Masaryk. Milan's health did not allow him to return to the battlefields of the First World War, but his skills and talents were used elsewhere. Milan crisscrossed Europe under the auspices of the French government, looking for Czech and Slovak soldiers. His job was to persuade them and to organize them into formal units. These were the kernels of the future Czechoslovak army, a critically important element in the nation-building process. When the First World War came to an end in 1918, this was a moment of great and spectacular victory. This was an escalation of a story filled with hope and determination. Czechoslovaks at long last had their country. This was also the fruit of the love labor of Milan Rastislav Stefanik, who worked ceaselessly and tirelessly for the mission. The story of Czechoslovakia, the universal tale of hope and perseverance, is woven into the very fabric of this gorgeous city and a beautiful country, as is the destiny of Milan Rastislav Stefanik. We hope you enjoy these little pieces of puzzle that we brought together for you. If you like what we do, there are many ways to support us. Please visit our website, our Facebook page, or get in touch. We depend on your generosity and your kindness in carrying on the path of sharing Slovakia with the world.